Hey, Atlantic Seaboard. My name's Tani. I'm the president of Greater Washington, and I just wanted to give a thought about this week's Parsha. So they start off. There's a pasuk in Chaf Aleph, pasuk bet that says Ki tikne eved ivri shesh shanim yavod uvashvi yetze lechavshi chinam, which literally translates into should you buy a Hebrew slave, he shall work for 6 years, and in the seventh year he shall go out to freedom without charge. Now, there's a lot of different ways you can interpret this. Just to give before we get into any interpretation, I just wanted to pose this question to everyone to give a second to think about it, which would be if you're in an unhealthy relationship or if you're maybe doing things with other people that you know you shouldn't be doing, or if you're working for somebody that you really don't like, or just anything where the people that you're around you influences who you are, then it depends on what do you think the dynamic of that is. Are you there because you have to, or are you there because you're afraid to go somewhere else? So I think that this pasuk, at least in Jewish tradition and in Jewish law, really addresses some of the issues, some of the modern issues that a lot of people have, but are just a little bit afraid to confront. So this translation, should you buy a Hebrew slave and he'll work for 6 years, and in the seventh year he shall go out to freedom without charge. That is essentially saying that's just a translation from an online translation, but that's saying that if you have a slave or if you have a Jewish servant for 6 years, in the seventh year you set him free. Now, a question would be when you're setting him free, the Ibn Ezra thinks that there's nothing more difficult for a person than to be subjugated to another person. Being a Jewish slave is one of the most difficult things that can happen to a person. Like, it's just that you're feeling subservient to everybody else. You feel useless. You feel like you can't be on your own. So in Jewish law, after 6 years, you have to let him go. You can't have somebody for more than 6 years because that person should go out and live a happy life and not just be a slave for his entire life. But you would think that it wouldn't necessarily have to be a person after he gets free. You wouldn't think there's really any issue with that, but that's on the surface. But if you delve deeper into it, if you've been a slave for 6 years, then what makes anybody think that that person can go out and just live a normal life? Like when somebody comes out of jail or they change their living environment that they've had the same one for 6 years, it's very hard to go and be a normal citizen. So that's part of why I think why in the Torah that God commanded us that after 6 years you have to let somebody go. Now, Ramban has a little bit of a different take on it. He actually thinks that there actually has to do with the cycles that after the seventh year, just like in Shemitah, you have 6 years and then the seventh year you don't like grow the land. In Israel, here you let them go after the seventh year. But Ramban also brings a very great analogy to this in that what was also that this is right after the Jewish people were slaves in Egypt for 210 years or 400 years, where that they had this slave mentality, and it's very hard to break away from that. And as we saw with the idols at Mount Sinai, or at Har Sinai, that's part of the issue that they had, that they couldn't get away from that slave mentality. So this whole pasuk has a lot of different connotations to it. There's the modern day application where if you're not happy with yourself, then you should go out, change your environment, or if you think that you're around an unhealthy relationship and a bad job, or just in unideal living conditions, you should go out and live your life in a happier, more healthy way. You can go out and change who you are, but instead of just reverting back to what you're used to, go out and just live a more normal, happy life. So I think that's the real message of this pasuk, that if you have a slave after 6 years, the seventh year you have to let him go, and according to like a bunch of different sources, you're actually supposed to help him live a happy life. He shouldn't just be like in this state of, oh, I'm a slave, I have no purpose in this life. So I think that just to conclude, I think that the modern day application to this would be if you are living if you're in an unhealthy relationship, or if you have a job that you're not happy with, then you should go and try to change that. You don't have to stay in the same unhappy state, just like these slaves were, and just like Bnei Israel was in Mitzrayim.